Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all awake. Anybody travelling through Victoria? No?
They're still there.
They're still there. That's why there's a fire at Victoria. So if there's anybody travelling that way or on the way back that way, be careful. So we're trying to arrange it so it fits anyway. But it's a pleasure to welcome you all again on behalf of the SCTE, Society of Broadband Professionals. We're at a fascinating point in our industry. The future of technology isn't something coming next. It's already here. Whether we're talking about fibre rollout, AI-driven networks, or convergence of infrastructure, and all the services, what we do as an industry today directly shapes how societies function tomorrow. Let's think about that. How has the copper network shaped us? And it's still shaping us, unfortunately. So we've got to try and build the networks of tomorrow, today. And that is why days like today really matter. Before we begin, I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to our sponsors, Viavi, FibrePlus, Abloy, Frame Communications, and All Right Advisory. Your support makes events like this possible, and importantly, it enables the collaboration we're going to have today. A quick note on the programme. If you've seen the printed version of the Broadband Journal, you'll notice a small change. Who noticed the small change? And what was the small change? No? Emma Young, Senior Director for AI Production Technology at Deluxe, is also on there now. So she'll bring a perspective on how AI is reshaping production and the delivery of ecosystems. Just a few housekeeping points. Any fire alarms, they're not planned, but a fire marshal will come round and tell us where we need to go. Try and speak clearly into the desk microphones because everything is being recorded. If you have a question, someone will come with a microphone. Please don't start speaking before you have that microphone, because otherwise we can't hear a word you're saying. Not only for us, but also those on camera. And I know our cameraman tries to tell us to do it, and we're going to try and do it this time. You've all been informed. Please follow it. I know he'll be suitably annoyed if we keep doing it. And that's the same for the QA session. Make sure you've got the microphone. I strongly encourage you to visit our sponsors. There's amazing demo stands upstairs, yet again. So this is where we take breaks and look into the real solutions. But today's about more than presentations. It's about dialogue, challenge, and progress. So with that, let's get started. Ian. Melissa would like to say, all the program is in here, and the speaker notes are in here. Otherwise, go to this side. There is also a QR code in here. Please find the QR code, scan it, and give some comments. Thank you.
Would all my panelists come on up and join us? Take your seats. You can try and maybe take the order in which you're up, which is alphabetical.
No, it's going to be
Alphabetical surname.
Mike's, you're on the
Okay.
Right, that's how it goes.
So I move down one.
Move down one.
So,
Thinking at this time.
there we go. Good morning. Hope you're well. So really introducing this session, it's going to be, bizarrely, even though it's about artificial intelligence, it's an eclectic mix because I think of the breadth that how artificial intelligence is affecting all our lives. It's affecting a great many different parts of our world, our technology, our production of content, our communication systems, everything. So the panel will represent that eclectic mix. But I also wanted to just take you forward to give you some context for artificial intelligence, because it can be very misunderstood, very much so, in fact. So what I would like to do then is firstly do some audience participation. And what I would like to do is get a show of hands from those of you. How many of you have been making use of AI chat chatbots. Oh, quite a lot, quite a lot. There's still some not making use of them. How many of you are actively using artificial intelligence in your daily life? Okay, so I'm going to challenge you now. Actually, that's the wrong answer. All of you are using artificial intelligence in your daily life because it's been around for 70 years. Yeah, so much. So it probably helps to understand what artificial intelligence is. And this is, firstly, let's describe where did the phrase artificial intelligence come from. It comes from a mathematician called John McCarthy, who coined the term in 1955 to promote a conference he was organising for 1956, for the summer of 1956. And he thought it was a good phrase. However, these days, I think many people see the phrase artificial intelligence and thinks, actually, it was a bad choice of words in the 1950s. Because actually, really, it's not actually artificial intelligence at all. And important to know that it's based on all the people who were attending that conference who were largely mathematicians and engineers. Because actually, it should have really been called applied computational statistics. Because that's really what is happening when you see this technology being deployed. It was a branch of analysing the real world and trying to come up with scientific and engineering solutions for what they called intelligent machines, but actually it just meant something more than standard logical programming. And what you see on this lovely little Venn diagram are the various forms of artificial intelligence, which is really what's represented by that phrase. Symbolic AI, which I myself did a lot of work in back in the 90s. These were things called expert systems. They were referred to with fuzzy logic type mathematics rather than Boolean logic. There were developments from that time with machine learning, using mathematical techniques, Bayesian probabilities, with using neural networks and deep learning. And these are all concepts that actually are just statistics applied with computers, analysing input data to produce an outcome or output data. But on top of that, today though, people have got an understanding of artificial intelligence as being something more than that, these chatbots, which look magical to many people. They look like they're thinking, they look like they are processing, they look like they are possibly alive. But actually, that's the challenge. It's you, the human, is seeing that perspective. They are actually still just mechanistic, stochastic, statistical software. And the bit that we refer to now and think about as AI, which is the reason why you came up with that answer saying that some of you hadn't been using AI, is because you're thinking about AI as being that chatbot that was really first hit wide acclaim in the late 2022 era when ChatGPT 3.0 was released. And that's colouring your perspective of what AI is and why you don't necessarily see it all around you. Because a good example of an application where AI has been used is your spam filter on your computer is Bayesian based with probably a lot more now placed on that. And you use that all the time. In fact, we've been using those spam filters for a couple of decades now. We also use it for up converting your content so that lovely standard definition television broadcast looks great on your 4K screen. There's machine learning and AI involved in that aspect. And actually, if you look closely, you'll find that all of these techniques that are governed by this description of artificial intelligence or applied computational statistics are actually a ribbon throughout your entire life. But we only see the chatbots as being the AI now. But it's much more than that, and we'll come to that in the discussion. And in fact, there is 4 different types of neural network structures or applications of neural networks which are enshrined within those chatbots and enshrined within all the other AI techniques. So things like classifier networks, generator networks, i.e. Gen AI, and as we'll come in some of the presentations, I'll talk about something called world models, We will talk about action-based models, etc. But now comes the bit where actually I'm going to leave you some homework, which is not for now. You'll hear various words throughout this day, or throughout this morning around AI. And the homework for you is to go home, fire up a chatbot, or standard Google search, which is pretty much a chatbot these days, and look up some of these terms. So when you get the presentation slide, you'll get these lovely word clouds, which will feed you all the things you should be looking at and trying to figure out and understand as engineers, because it will help greatly to you to understand that this is just software if you see how it really works underneath it. And then you may get a little bit less worried about artificial general intelligence coming along, taking over the world and killing us all because we stuck it on the back of a robot with a machine gun. And there you get some more words again. So I'm feeding you homework that you need to get into. So that's just my introduction. Now we're going to go into the actual presentations. So let us begin. Michael.
Thanks for that. So Michael Drury, I work for two companies actually, Terra Praxis, which is a not-for-profit, which is trying to decarbonise fossil-fueled industry using nuclear and how we get to that, and LucidCatalyst, which is the company that does all the consultancy. So we work for some major companies like Exelon in the oil and gas industry, Microsoft, which you'll obviously know about, and for lots of different nuclear vendors and governments we represent in the US state, UK government, etc. So lots of different companies we work for. What I'm going to try and take you through today, and there's like a lot of slides, but I'm going to do it really quick. So I just want you to get the key message. And and you'll get these slides, so you can take them home, so you don't need to really read them, because you'll get them. The key point is the messages I say as I talk it through. So here, you've got to look at the exponential growth on energy demand, and in particular for you guys, I guess, with data center growth, is, well, how are we going to move from, where we went from 0 to 460 terawatt hours, which took roughly 30 years, to how we're going to do 1,760 terawatt hours just for North America and Europe. That's a huge demand. And how do we do that quickly? I mean, 2050 is not that far away. And you look at the same thing for the UK, that's an awful lot of energy to start providing to data centres. And you could say, well, that's fine, we'll just redesign the data centres, we'll make some new components, make them more efficient, and it'd be easy, right? We can just reduce the demand. Yeah, there'll be a level of that, and yes, you can do that. But when you do that growth, how do you get the supply chain to actually support that? How do you get those really difficult long lead items that are needed for energy supply? And I'm not just talking, for me, a nuclear power station. I'm talking all the other little bits that support it, a transformer for the substation. The lead times for these things are quite high. We were talking I can't remember who it was I was talking to earlier, but it's like 11 years roughly for grid connection. And the length, the list to get on it is huge. So how do we get that changed from where we are today to the future to be able to provide that power? And the type of power that we supply has to be aligned for those data centres. So like you say, Hinkley Point C, it's 46 billion now, maybe a bit higher. Started out at roughly 15 billion. You go, right, I'm going to build a data centre. You've got 15 billion to spend on a power station for it. That isn't going to work. So you have to think, how do I get that alignment with all of these different technologies to support the way the industry is deployed? How do I get, if I say nuclear, and that's what I'm trying to help, how do we get to nuclear to support those industries? We have to think about, 5 nines, got to get that, got to get it right, got to get our capacity factor right, we've got to make sure that we deploy at the pace, and we have to make sure that we can align with the grid configuration so that you don't get fluctuations in your power demand. But the way in which the data centres are designed themselves are also changing. And we work really closely with some of the world's leading data centre developers, or designers, should I say. Bryden Wood, who's been our partner for around about 10 years. And we work really closely with how do we develop and deploy the technology to support not just data centers, actually it's lots of industries, but today I'm talking about data centers. But one of the things that they're starting to do is go, well, actually the way in which we build the data centers is going to be very, very different from what we do today. So how do you start to take that on board if you're going to transition data centers to use nuclear in the future? How do you make sure that we've got the power there, but ultimately how do we make sure that power is at the right price? And you can see there, it's quite clear, UK is really cheap for electricity, isn't it? Like really cheap. We have to change how we deliver that. And there's loads of these technologies for nuclear, like absolutely tons. And believe me, I've represented UK government on small modular reactors and AMRs, flown out to IAEA to represent the country on the different technologies. And I know all the little foibles about the research that's needed to underpin what's a good tech, what's a bad tech, what's got challenges, and even those that are like a light water reactor, really easy to do because we've done it before. It's not. There's some challenges along that journey. It's not as simple and straightforward as people think. But equally, there are like tech that's out there that's really challenging. But if it worked, it could be really, really good, especially when you start to think about how do you support a data centre and its growth. Large power station, Hinkley Point C, light water reactor, deliberately big, need to get the economics right. How do I get the economics right if I build it really small? And then I can grow with that data centre as it goes. And there's loads of companies that are really looking at it. And we work with loads of these companies. And it's just an example of 3 different kind of major projects that were announced and in public domain that you've heard of. But there's loads of things that you haven't necessarily heard of as well. And there's plenty of discussion on, well, I'll use fusion. You know, the power of the sun. Yeah, maybe. And I've worked at JET and I've worked at ITER, and yeah, that's a challenge. It's a lot of work to do to get that to work, because I can't even get a heat exchanger to take the heat away and then use that energy. And we're at like level 0 of development, so the technology isn't quite there. So again, how do we get from that current model of where we are today, first of a kind, big power stations, down to a battery? I was talking to someone earlier about how do we get to a battery size scale. Is that even possible to go from this big construction site to something more akin to the automotive industry, where we have small components that are replicated all the time off of a factory production line? I used to work at Jaguar Land Rover. We had 17 minutes a new car rolling off the line. How'd you get nuclear to do that? That's a real challenge, really difficult. But if you start to do that, if you start to design the parts for mass manufacturing, you start to break it down so that you can deploy it across multiple regions. You start to really turn it into small little commodities, small products that all come together. So very similar to how you might have a laptop with a USB port. Every laptop's got a USB port and everybody can plug into a USB port. How do you make nuclear similar? How do you get to that? That's really tricky and difficult, especially when the industry is aligned to, well, if we put lots of change and engineer, procure, construct, we can constantly change. We're driven to actually not change the model to a factory-produced battery. So it's difficult to move things to a point where you can scale them easily. You can just add another battery on. You need 1 AA battery or 2 AA or 3 AAs. Difficult. But once you start to solve that, you then start to be able to apply it to multiple industries. The speed at which you can deploy. We took 8 oil and gas companies together with the US NRC to talk through how do we do this quickly. We would take on nuclear in the oil and gas industry, but only if you can let us commit to it after 6 months of due diligence. 6 months. How do you get nuclear to do that? It takes nearly 10 years to license the thing. So we have to find ways to speed things up, speed up the deployment. Things like artificial intelligence, which we're all talking about today, but how do we support that and create systems that allow us to evaluate sites quickly, to look at deployment, how we can look at configuration, so it automatically moves it onto sites and assesses it very, very quickly. How do we get those licensing documents and development consent order planning applications done within weeks, not within years? The real challenge isn't whether nuclear is good or bad for it. The real challenge is how do you actually get it to align with the type of industry that you're trying to align it to? Thanks.
Thank you. So, next up, Mike Hewitt.
Right, I'm going to take a little bit of a journey fairly quickly. I'll try not to use up too much of the time. I'm the founder of an organisation called Breakwater Technology. 40 years in the telco domain. I've spent my last 10 years at the intersection of innovation, digitisation around transport, and the last 5 years within our smart metering energy system. And I think it's really important that we need to start to think of us all as leaders, no matter where you are in your organisation, as breakwaters. I use the word breakwaters because we're going to see waves of change over the next 5 years, driven by technologies, driven by AI, and we need to be able to calm some of that change out for our organisations. I'm going to challenge one thing you just said, which is AI is software. No, AI is becoming infrastructure. The infrastructure that runs our country. It will be the infrastructure, the data centres are becoming almost their own utilities with the power requirements that they have. So I'm going to take us through three things. AI, what does it actually mean? AI is starting to do things for us. It's not just a chatbot, it's starting to automate things. So we need to think about the question we asked ourselves. I've been asked so often, can you create an AI strategy? My first question is, what should change in your operating model? AI cannot be a bolt-on. We have to change the way we run our organisations. That's absolutely critical. And then we'll start to see the benefits. When we bolt it on, AI programs generally fail and add cost and add complexity. We've seen now, in the last probably month, OpenClaw probably has got more traction in the last month than open source Linux got in 2 decades. It's changing the way we do things. When are you going to see one of your field engineers with an OpenClaw agent on his laptop that compiles all of his survey results, and by the time he gets into his vehicle, that survey's been sent to a client? Those are the things we need to start to enable. But I'm absolutely clear that AI is not just one answer, and it doesn't replace people. We've got to keep humans in the loop. Think of AI as the operating systems in our organisations, and think of the people as the kernels. The culture, the people that hold the accountability, that hold the trust, and will drive the change and the economics into our organisation. So really start to think about how you're going to restructure your organisation to use the benefits of AI infrastructure. The government announced yesterday a £2.5 billion fund to accelerate AI in the UK. I think £2.5 billion is underwhelming when we're spending in America £10 billion on single data centres. We need to start to think bigger. So that's some of the AI discussion that we can have. As I've spent the last 5 years around the energy system, I'm going to put a lens around that. Net zero. Every home will have behind-the-meter assets, vehicle-to-grid, batteries, heat pumps, assets that will need to be controlled in real time. All those assets will be connected using the technologies we all deliver every single day of our lives. Those assets need to be secure and they need to operate to C&I standards. We're not going to do that with people. It's going to be automated. It's going to use AI-type systems to automate that. So that's a huge challenge. Millions and millions of assets. We're not having those big conversations. I spent the last 5 years looking at some of the digitisation challenges we've got in our energy system, and it's disjointed and it's in silos. The only way we break those silos down is by events like this, by getting people in a room, talking about the challenges and starting to break down those barriers to change. So in Energy OS, AI will be an organisational OS. It's part of our organisation. It's part of our critical national infrastructure, and it'll be part of every single organisation. You can't ignore it. And the final one I touched on, breakwaters, leadership, leading when we're going through complex change. As individuals, we've got to create certainty, not confusion. So how do we act to filter out and enable the people in our organisations to use these tools, not to be scared of them, to be able to use them in a safe way, an auditable way? We can never take the human out of the loop for critical decisions. And that's the key message I want to take away from today. Our people remain the kernel, I'm going to use that word, of the operating system of the future, which will be AI-enabled organisations built on top of critical national infrastructure that runs our country. So those are the three themes that we have a chance to talk about today, and hopefully we'll get some great questions from the panel session. And I think I'm handing over now to Phil.
Alrighty, morning everybody. I'm Phil. Skip over that one. There you are. That's me. Not quite me. Slightly more hair, a couple of extra fingers. I couldn't very well sit on an AI panel and not use AI to produce my slides. So I'm a legally trained software engineer who ended up becoming a sales guy in critical national infrastructure. And anybody that wants to have an argument about whether telecoms is critical national infrastructure, happy to do that at any point today. You'll lose, as has already been evidenced so far. But that kind of slightly eclectic background gives me three lenses that I look at technology through, and I call them law, code, and plumbing. So law, I look, the governance of things, right? The rules. How do we manage things? Trust is a big element of that. I look at how systems actually work. It's a long time since I've written a line of code, but I'd like to think I could still figure out. I'm not the typical sales guy that might sit there and say, I'm just a salesman, I don't know how that worked. And then lastly, the plumbing, right? So I think the key theme and one of my key things with AI is that all the glossy stuff is on the top, but actually none of that happens without what's working underneath. And that's what Technetix do. So probably many people in the room will know who Technetix are. If you've ever had a service from Virgin Media, then you've almost certainly had a Technetix product in your house or attached to the outside of your house. But you would never have known it unless you broke it open and looked inside to find our logo. We work at this layer, not technically underground, but we build the things that these fancy new AI platforms and programs and initiatives rely on. None of them work without the plumbing underneath. Question that lots of people ask, is AI magic? If you're a Silicon Valley exec, it might well be magic for your share price. I'm pretty sure one of these four people is Jack Dorsey. The other three maybe will reveal themselves in the future, who knows? Is it magic? No, I don't think we'd agree that it's magic. There's, as I say, a lot that goes on in the background. Many people running AI projects probably look like this at various different points of an evening or a weekend when it's not quite going to plan. But is it a game changer for productivity? I think that's one of the big open questions that is a very emotive and evocative question at the moment. My view is yes, I think it is. Used in the right way, and I don't think necessarily the current way that we're all using it is the way that's going to really drive the productivity forward. But productivity is something that many advanced economies have struggled with for the last few years. And I am firmly in the camp that AI could solve that problem if we can figure out how to use it properly. So my belief really is that AI isn't actually the hard part. Software is really, really easy, right? It changes really quick. You can write it. You don't even need a human to write it anymore. You can roll it out in minutes, in seconds. You've already heard Michael say 11 years, was it, to connect a data center to the grid. Anybody that's built a physical network will tell you of similar timelines, right? So the advances in the platforms move at such a pace compared to the infrastructure that supports those, that those are, the lowest common denominator is always the limit in the end, right? And the power or the infrastructure or the things behind it are really what's going to inhibit our ability to leverage AI and move that forward. So you'll probably hear lots of people talk about the data quality, the trust and governance, the infrastructure, the integration into our world and our lives in society. And that's really where the challenges have come from and where we need to be focused. So if you find that you're working on an AI project and you have a man with a 1970s air conditioner there to cool it for you, you know you've probably done something wrong along the way. And that's me. Look forward to the discussion with everybody else. Rich, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to be a lot more abstract. Hi, I'm Rich Welsh. I have a lot of hats. One of them is Chairman, I put this on this one. It wasn't intentional, actually, but a bit of branding. I'm chairman of the board of a startup called Volustor, which works in volumetric asset management, and we use AI under the hood a lot in our tools. In fact, it completely underpins all of our software, but we don't talk about ourselves as an AI company because we believe that AI is the tool that facilitates what we do. But my background is media and entertainment. I was a sound engineer and then got into product design, software engineering, and I've had various startups which I've sold, and in fact the one that I sold nearly 10 years, no, sorry, sold it 5 years ago, but we had AI technology that we'd been developing for a good few years at that point. It's almost 10 years old. They still haven't deployed it. So I was interested to hear about the 11 years to get to a data center or a power plant, but I can see 9-year-old AI that hasn't been deployed yet. So it's not completely infrastructure related problem. I also do investment as well. I'm part of a VC fund in Silicon Valley, which invests in AI specifically, and I'm also the president of SCTE, which is a sister society to SCTE, co-owners of IBC. Yes, lots of hats. Anyway, I wanted to just talk to you about kind of the things that I've seen in AI, having been involved in it for a while, and I wouldn't say I'm jaded, but I'm definitely having mixed feelings about AI. It literally underpins the business that I'm looking forward to my retirement working off. So, like, if we sell that one, great. But at the same time, I'm kind of worried about AI. I'm not worried about it from probably our point of view as a room. We're all professionals, we're all educated, and we know what we're doing, but the general public aren't, actually. And I worry a lot about anthropomorphism, and actually it can be a real security problem for you guys adopting AI. People attribute human attributes to AI all the time, especially chatbots, especially agents. Agents are becoming very powerful parts of business today. I was literally yesterday pitching for the UK government Agentic AI Prize, which is the first of its kind from the UK government. Obviously, they're looking to sort of springboard a little bit AI in the UK. So they run this prize about agents, and it's like literally build agents to do some novel thing. So, I mean, that's great. Like, from a business point of view, from a technology point of view, yes, agents are very powerful, but also it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that they are making decisions like a person would, because on face value they do, but actually they're not people, and they are statistical algorithms that are making decisions, and you don't know what they're going to get wrong. You start to ask them to do things, and you might be thinking it's AI for good as well. One of the sort of touted kind of applications of agentic AI is support for people who are living on their own, for instance, maybe mental health issues, and giving them companionship. But that's the problem. If it goes wrong, you don't know what people are going through, and AI doesn't care. It's just, not that it doesn't care. It's literally a statistical algorithm. You don't know what the edge case things might be, and it might encourage someone who lives on their own to do things that would be really harmful, whilst it might appear on face value to support them and give them companionship. It could go wrong. So I personally have a big problem with anthropomorphism. My biggest issue with it is human scale challenges. So this is something you'll see a lot if you go to big trade shows like CES and so on. They're humanoid robots going around doing humanoid tasks, and they're like, well, they're human scale problems like loading a dishwasher or opening a door. These robots are shit at doing that, by the way. They are absolutely, they're the worst. But it's like this sort of, like, it's building it because they can, not because we should. it's a bit Jurassic Park, I know. I mean, I'm from the film industry, what can I do? But, you know, we really have to think about whether we're building things in the right way. I have no problem with robots, by the way. I've got 3 robot vacuum cleaners, I kid you not, and they're all really good. They're on different levels, and they go and do their thing. But they look like vacuum cleaners or something. They don't look like people pushing my Dyson around, like, you know, which, you know, that's, I think we have to think about that. And I jest a little bit, but I really think about anthropomorphism when you're applying AI, because your staff will start to, if they're not careful, fall into the trap of feeling like these things are making decisions as a human would, and they're not humans. Right, I'll get off my hobby horse. World models, really, really important. I think agents are going to not be the kind of the buzzword in the next 12 months. That will sort of fade into the background as agents become commonplace in industrial and kind of commercial applications. World models are really, really important, and I guess especially when you're looking at infrastructure, a lot of you, I guess, are using digital twins to model your infrastructure in the virtual environment, so that you can kind of play out different scenarios and not have to do that in the real world. So, you know, I know it's used in like power stations. I know it's used in telecoms to model effectively what the network will do or what the power station will do under certain circumstances. So world models are going to become really important. World models are being built around us. I think Ian said it earlier, you know, AI is everywhere, whether you think you're using it or not. World models are being built very specifically by the big tech companies right now. Every time you see a Waymo driving, I saw 2 this morning, driving past, testing, you know, they're capturing the world. That data is not just sitting with Waymo for driving cars. That data is being sold. It's world models of all the streets that Waymos drive on. Anyone who's wearing a pair of Meta glasses, that data is signed over to Meta. You've got your Meta Ray-Bans or your Meta Oakleys. That data belongs to Meta. It doesn't belong to you. As soon as you buy them, you literally have effectively waived your rights to the stereo 3D data being captured by those glasses. So you have to think about that. And Amazon are putting glasses on every delivery driver globally very soon. That's their stated aim. It's not to track the drivers, it's to map the real world. And this sort of stuff goes beyond that. It's physics, and it's, you know, behavior in the real world. It's human behavior, physical behavior, biological behavior. So, you know, it's a big deal. But world models are going to be a big thing. So if you don't know about world models, I strongly encourage you to start to look into them, because they are extremely powerful. Also, again, something that we have to think about in terms of privacy and IP, which brings me to my last one. I don't want to sound bleak, by the way. I feel like I am coming off a bit bleak. Just want you to kind of be educated and be aware of what AI is doing. Protecting IP is going to get harder and harder. Particularly, world models is a big deal, actually, because we have digital twins of a lot of infrastructure. I think the cost to the UK alone of digital twin IP infringement is something like 8.5 billion a year. Just to put that into context, that's just the cost of damage done by stealing digital twins. It's a really, really big deal. So protecting your IP is really important. AI can help you protect IP, but obviously AI can also be a tool for stealing IP. And honestly, because we have a fragmented legal system, not in the UK but globally, it's very, very hard. You know, people can protect, you know, copyright and patents in the UK, but go and try and chase those down when they've been stolen in China. I hate to say it, but you can't protect those things. So protecting your IP is your problem. It's not a legal problem. Protecting your IP is something that you have to think about doing for yourself. I believe that AI can be a force for good in protecting IP, but I also think that you have to think about AI as both a threat and an asset. So really look after your intellectual property, because in the future it's going to be harder and harder to protect, and nobody's going to do it for you legally. That's super bleak. Positive thing about AI, we're making better movies out of AI, which is a good moment to hand over to Emma. I'm off.
Hello, nice to be here. My name's Dr. Emma Young. I've been really interested in listening to the presentations today. Mine's completely different, of course. This kind of audience isn't usually the audience I would speak about my work to. However, I did talk a couple of years ago in Paris at the Network X event, so lots of broadband and telecoms professionals there. And I was talking about using AI for hyper-personalised media and how the demands of infrastructure would be impacted by that when you're personalising content for every audience member. That was when I worked at the BBC. So currently I work for a company called Deluxe. Show of hands, who has heard of Deluxe Media Entertainment? Wow, okay, that's more than I thought. Fantastic. So Senior Director of AI Production Technology at Deluxe. So for those of you who don't know, we work on a lot of movies that you'll be very familiar with. The company has been on the go for over 100 years. The likes of films like Breakfast at Tiffany's, all the way to Titanic, and latest movies that come out, for example, 28 years later. That's something I've not seen yet. Very interesting. When I started, it was only about 6 months ago, and on my first day, I spent some time with the digital effects team. And when you're watching a movie at the cinema, you don't really appreciate what goes into, getting those films prepared for distribution. So localization, so that is getting movies prepared for distribution all over the world. And part of that is censorship. So when I was sitting with this really creative guy, craft expert in digital effects, he was telling me, when a movie goes off to get played in, for example, cinemas in the UAE, they're dead against nudity, violence, swearing even. So I was really interested to see the intricate craft skills that go into kind of frame by frame, removing elements that wouldn't be suitable for audiences in different parts of the world. For example, Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. What's it called again? Help me out here. Charlie, yes, that's right. Charlie's, yeah, that's the one. So the Golden Ticket, you're all familiar with. So it was a remake of that. And it's got the text on it, certain font, it's in English, it's got to get distributed all over the world. So the actual craft skills that goes into removing that text, forming exactly the same font in different languages, ready for distribution. I was blown away, because you just don't think about that when you go watch a movie at the cinema. You think it's going to be the same for everyone? No, there's lots getting changed. So yeah, we also do mastering and distributing to cinemas all over the world, as well as different formats for getting content ready for broadcast, for mobile, and all the different formats that go into that. So really interesting company. Only been there 6 months, and I'm still learning stuff every single day. So AI is currently being used to help with some of these kind of not tedious, but painstaking, time-consuming tasks. But that's not what I work on day to day. So I work with a team all based in LA, and we are working on speeding up the creative workflows when a movie is actually in production and in pre-production. So when a movie gets greenlit, funding is in place, it's going ahead. There's a lot of different roles that it takes a long, long time. For example, you've got artists developing concept art, you've got storyboards, you've got shot planning, and there's a whole load of skills. And it's an iterative process, because it gets signed off at every single stage. So we are using generative AI to help speed up some of those processes. So if you imagine for example, concept art. If you imagine an artist spits out loads and loads of ideas, and then it's like, no, I'm not happy with that. So it kind of, scrunched up, paper on the floor, start again. If you are able to give that concept artist access to Gen AI that understands your franchise, understands all the characters, the environments, the stylistic properties of your movie, then that concept artist is able to generate like hundreds of different ideas in minutes, basically. And it just wasn't possible before. So concept sketches for mood and inspiration, for previs, I mean, that's a massive thing. Before you're paying lots of actors to come in and you want to see what a shot looks like, you can pre-visualize it before making any expensive decisions, basically. And we are not, I'm sure you've seen lots of examples of fully Gen AI short films. I don't know whether you're impressed with what you've seen so far or not. I think it kind of moves into that uncanny valley kind of area, like the 6 fingers thing that you were talking about. Yeah, I think fingers are getting better, but still, facial expressions, mood, you can always just tell, and that's kind of a worrying thing as well. So on social media, I follow this silly page with lots of beautiful landscapes in the States. I love the States. I want to live there one day. And there's thousands and thousands of people liking and commenting on these, to me, which is clearly, generative AI has produced this image, but they're like, and it's just an impossible landscape. And you can even see some of the artifacts. You're like, this isn't real. But so many people are fooled. It's unbelievable. And people commenting like, oh, this place looks amazing. I really want to go. And it's like, what? Do you not have eyeballs? Can you not see this isn't real? But a lot of people are fooled. Anyway, that was just a little side thing. One of my bugbears. So yeah, iterative workflow, or was talking about this. So just speeding up that time to go from an idea to passing it on to the next person in the process. If you can develop those ideas really quickly, and they're also, almost like photoreal as well, then you can get a real clear idea of how things are going to look before you get further on in the creative process. But there is a massive issue. If you are generating ideas and content for a franchise, a movie franchise, so you've got several films in sequence. I mean, how many Fast and Furious films have there been by now? I think it's 10 or something like that. 400. It's something. Yeah.
Feels like it.
It does feel like it. Yeah. But in order for generative AI to understand your movie, your style, the characters, any creatures, the environments, how characters move through the world, the model has to be trained on your data. So that's obviously a massive, massive risk. Big studios don't want to train for models to be trained on their high value IP, on their content. It's got to be trained on something. I mean, yeah, YouTube content's been used for training a lot of video models. But studios, and quite rightly so, are massively worried about their content getting into, the wrong hands, because then suddenly you can generate lots of different stuff that's got the look and feel of a big movie, and really it's just someone sitting on their sofa on their phone using a image or text to video model. So protecting IP is a massive thing. So yeah, we don't really need that slide. So yeah, rapid creative exploration, secure rights-aware governance. I mean, and that's the thing, provenance is a massive thing as well. Because you want to know where something has come from. And if your content's being used to train a model, then you want to know about it. And also attribution. So, if someone all their creative work is being used to train a model, and then you can very quickly, for example, music, generate music, it sounds exactly like an artist, or the likeness, voice, It was, you know, it was unmistakable. If you've got like Morgan Freeman, for example, everyone knows Morgan Freeman's voice. Suddenly, you know, will he no longer get paid? Because you can just generate the voice instead. And like, we don't need him anymore. We'll just generate it with AI. So yeah, artists getting paid is a big thing. So you may have heard about this landmark deal between Disney and OpenAI. So Disney, this is marking a shift because, you know, studios, when they're in pre-production, they want to make use of Gen AI to speed up their creative workflow. However, the massive fear about their valuable IP being used to train models. So it's got to be done in a really, really secure environment. And Disney here is really taking the lead by investing $1 billion in OpenAI for their licensed 200 characters, which OpenAI's video model, Sora, can be used to generate completely new content with those characters. So I think it's Disney characters, Marvel characters, and Pixar. Now, I think this is great, and it shows that the shift, you know, a big studio invested in one AI company, though, I find it quite interesting because the best-in-class models today, in a month's time, you know, that's totally going to change. So you've got studios making these massive investments when things are going to move on. But what I worry about, and I don't know how the guardrails are going to be, how they're going to control this, what's going to stop someone from generating an image of, I don't know, Snow White, getting into some really sticky situations? You know, like pornographic video, for example, or violent scenes. So I'm interested to see what happens. But Disney, on their Disney Plus channel, they're actually going to curate the best of the stuff that's been produced, and they're going to show it on that channel. So there's going to be a channel dedicated to the output of this. So I find it really interesting. Things are changing at a massive pace, and it's really interesting to see where it's going to go. So looking forward to the discussion. We've got a really mixed bag of people and expertise here. So yeah, thank you very much.
Right. So, as I said, it was an eclectic mix of perspectives in and around artificial intelligence and the use of it, as well as some of the things we didn't probably really talk about at the beginning, which is about the energy usage and where do we get that from, because everything has to come from something, same way that all the models have to come and be trained on something as well. But I'd like to probably start with the sort of the problem that people see and perceive and talk about a lot with regard to AI, and that is what is the success rate of projects that implement AI? Because you hear a lot of stories from the discussions of the last 3 or 4 years of how AI has done good things and made productivity gains, has done something very special, something great, and other times you then hear surveys where you hear descriptions of projects where it says that 90% of all AI projects have failed to deliver anything useful. So, on that thought, that apparently 90% of AI projects have not done anything useful at all, what are your thoughts about that? And I'll go with Rich first.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely worked on AI projects that have gone nowhere commercially. And we spend a lot of time doing them, but also you can do things very, very fast with AI. I think the advantage is to iterate really quickly and find things that commercially have value. I think don't go AI is going to solve my problem. Use AI because you know that's a solution to the thing you're trying to do. To go in just going, oh, we'll use AI, you're definitely on a hiding to nothing, and you'll fall in that 90% trap. Mm-hmm. If you're very clear about your goals and you know that it's a solution to that, then yeah, go for it, because you can iterate really fast. You can find very powerful solutions very quickly, and I think they have huge commercial value. I think the 90% is people who are going like, oh, AI is going to get rid of 50% of my workforce or something. And actually we saw a very, very clear indicator of that. I think, what was the company? They laid off like 90% of their support staff. Yes. Yeah, that's it. Duolingo. And then they had to rehire them when they couldn't, because they all went, fuck you, you fired me. Their support went through the floor because they'd been promised AI. So one of the things that you will see, and I'll shut up in a minute, but one of the things that's really prevalent at the moment is companies using AI as effectively a scapegoat. I've talked about this in other conferences. AI has been used as like, oh, we're gonna lay off all these staff and then AI will replace them, and they do it because the shareholders are like, go on then, great. Loads of profits, and it doesn't work. And the other one is like, we're doing really bad because other companies have implemented AI and they're beating us. Basically, AI is being used as a scapegoat for bad commercial decisions. It's really good one for, poor leadership to blame and then get the shareholders to go, oh yeah, it's AI. So I think knowingly going into AI is a really good thing, and you can get really good outcomes, but going in using it for the wrong reasons, yeah, you can fuck yourself, basically.
Great. Wonderful.
Sorry for the language.
That's all right. We're now going to have a really interesting rating on YouTube.
Yeah, that was.
Mike Hewitt, you talked about the organisation OS and AI. What's your perspective on the same aspect about that? 90% of project failure that people talk about.
Yeah. For me, we try and bolt it on. I've seen it. I've lived it. The board says we need an AI strategy. The CEO turned around and said, right, where does that sit? Oh, well, we'll go to the CTO and he can write the AI strategy. And that's never going to work, because you're just bolting tools on to existing processes. You fundamentally need, if you want to make AI work in an organisation, it needs to sit almost at that CEO level. He's going to own the AI, the target operating model for the organisation. And then where can we add AI onto it? There are things you may want to automate, and it's fantastic at that. Chatbots. Recently I had a failure with my Starlink satellite. Literally a chatbot, within 5 minutes talking to the chatbot, the replacement had been dispatched. No person needed to do it. That was an example of it working really, really well. But there are so many examples of people where we just bolted onto an existing process, we expected to automate something that wasn't designed to be automated, and we lose value. We lose people's interest, we lose their confidence, and we lose their trust. So we have to think about that fundamental. If we want to be AI native organisations over the next 5 years, you need to step back and say, how am I going to structure my organisation? This isn't a technology strategy. It doesn't sit with the CISO. It doesn't sit with the CFO. It doesn't sit with the COO. There's got to be a real interlock of all of those individuals to drive that end-to-end process change. And then you can apply the tools. Access to the knowledge, what are you going to automate, and then what are you going to fundamentally rethink, and also what are you going to ditch doing?
Yeah. In terms of, so you talk there a lot about automation, and is that a way of reducing costs, or is it actually about gaining advantage?
Cost one's an interesting one. When do we start to make tokens part of our financial reporting for organisations? If everyone's using AI, they're all going to be generating tokens, and each one of those tokens has a cost associated with it. So does that then become a financial measure in an organisation that you then apply to individuals that says, I'm going to give Phil 10 tokens, and Mike's going to have 3. So how do we start to use it? So it's a tokenisation as an underlying cost that will go into organisations. No one's investing the hundreds of billions of pounds in AI because it's a charity. They're looking for a return on their investment. So it's going to have to be monetised, and it's going to have to be controlled within organisations. And if we don't start to think about that now, we're going to end up with cloud costs all over again. Organisations did their shift to cloud, that we moved from on-prem, and they found the costs going up, not coming down, because they hadn't put the controls in place to run this infrastructure. And AI is just another infrastructure that has a cost associated with it, albeit a significant cost, I think.
I think I've got some good news for you, because I believe the CEO of NVIDIA this week said that every employee now actually has got a allocation of tokens as part of their compensation, which is quite an interesting way of compensating people. But then again, when you're paying people millions a year, what else can you actually give them that they might value? But that's really interesting there. So it's about embedding then, about integrating and thinking clearly about what you're trying to achieve. So going to Phil, in terms of your current approaches and your view on that within Technetix, what are the active programs where you're hoping to achieve success with AI?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'm not surprised by the 90% failure. I wonder what the statistic is for how many projects that moved from typist to word processor failed, and how many .com projects in the 90s failed, right? I think the difference with AI is that, as Rich said, it's just accelerated the scale. You know, in the 90s, you might have 1 million projects that failed over 10 years. With AI, you have 1 million projects that fail in 10 minutes, and that's why you can have those statistics. But I think in terms of, to the second part of your question, what projects need to work, you need to start at the bottom. When in my preview, I said the lowest common denominator is always the limiting factor. If you try and fix the things at the top and you grow the top line, the lowest common denominator doesn't move. It will always come back to bite you in the ass. So without getting into very, very technical specifics about what we do in Technetix and the infrastructure, we're focused on bringing up that lowest common denominator rather than a lot of the glory work that is focused on pushing that top number even higher.
Okay, and of course, we had the first presentation by Michael Drury here about the energy part, and probably that initially looked to be a bit of an odd one for you initially, but I think probably it ignores the fact that energy is one of the biggest challenges for all of these data centers we need to actually provide this capacity. And you touched on the planning issues with regard to nuclear, but do you see planning issues as being a broader sense? And I also want to point out an interesting fact. I think Sizewell C was given the go-ahead, and it hasn't been completed yet. It was given the go-ahead under the last Labour government in, I think, 2009. So we're now 16, 17 years later, and it's still not complete. It's a lot more expensive now as well, especially when you're working over that time span. Inflation has an impact on your project cost. But what about, in terms of energy, what are the biggest challenges around general planning for data centres themselves?
I think as we move in the UK, data centres is moving to national strategic infrastructure, in which case you're moving into development consent order planning, which is exactly the same as nuclear, except you don't have a nuclear licensing aspect that you have to do as well. The challenge for nuclear in the past was it's a political thing more than anything. A lot of the reactors that we had in the past, like the AGRs, they worked, they did their things, they produced energy, but actually we went to a Westinghouse PWR because they wanted a deal with the US government at the time. Hinkley Point C, Sizewell, there's a political reason for doing those projects. It's not just about creating energy in a project that's huge and bringing economic benefits to the regions, which is great, fine. But if you're trying to do this for data centres and it's national strategic important, then you have to be able to marry that in the process. A development consent order planning application takes roughly 4 years. That's just planning. So you've got to go through your environmental assessments, impact assessments, you've got to go through your town and country planning. There's all aspects of those that you have to do for any project that's NSIP or SIP. Nuclear has the same thing. So when you deploy these projects, we have to really think about how do we do that faster and quicker. And I think you're saying, not you, but the panels and whatnot, 90% of failure. I think that's probably true. I don't deny it at all. I think the challenge is, how do you take benefit of those that aren't failure? What can you do that's different? So we did one example where we went, okay, let's take licensing for the reactor, and how do we speed that up? How do we find the challenges in the license application quicker so that we can address those faster? And we found those problems, and it saved us roughly 94% of the cost and time it would have taken to do the exact same work by hand. And we checked it, validated it, made sure it was the right thing. So we did have to go through and check it a lot, to be honest. It wasn't perfect straight away. But the same can be done with planning permission. And we have to find ways in, well, how do we do it quicker? Why does it take 4 years? What's the reason behind that? And what kind of things can we do to maybe, okay, if we go the simplified version of AI, automate it, machine learning type approach, okay, fine. But actually there's probably some other things that we can do different. And that's the kind of things that we're working on at the moment. So we've started to develop some of those tools that allow you to do those applications much, much faster. But you have to be honest with yourself. The application is a draft. It's not perfect at all. But what might take somebody half a year to do is now done within minutes. Well, maybe not minutes, but much faster time frame. In which case you can get to that iterative process much faster. And it's that iteration that allows you to develop the applications faster. The real problem that I'm seeing in planning is actually if companies, industries are doing that, the regulators are going, oh, we don't have that yet. We use Copilot. And it doesn't work to do what they need to at the pace that the industry is trying to move forward. So how do you get that balance to marry? That's the real challenge, I think.
Okay. And it's probably important to understand the context of the timescales, that those 4-year or 5-year or longer planning cycles you're talking about, it's only been 3 years and 4 months since ChatGPT 3 triggered this explosion of artificial intelligence. And that's, it may feel a lot longer to all of you, but it actually is a very short amount of time. So it's interesting that you're talking there about actually using AI to improve the way that we get planning to then get the energy required to then build more data centers to use AI. But that isn't actually it isn't a self-fulfilling prophecy approach, is it? It is actually the fact that you are really there looking at the good things of what AI is doing and how it can help us get progress moving. That's what you've really presented on, isn't it?
Yeah, on that side of it, yeah. I think, realistically getting the power there for the data centers to power that ultimately is about large companies, their model. So if I get more data centers, then there's more space to sell on the platform. If there's more space to sell, you need to buy more tokens. If you buy more tokens, I get revenue. People go, here, have tokens. Great, I've got a bonus. For what? For what? Now, I personally, I have to use tokens to do job. I can't do job without tokens. So some of us have tokens, some of us don't in the organisation, because it's not unlimited. There's a cost to it. It's really difficult. So I do think there is a level of self-fulfilling prophecy as well that goes alongside it. Okay. It's not quite as black and white.
So it's at this point I would like to open up some questions from the audience. And remember to wait for the microphone. There we go.
James Thornby, Grey Sky Consulting. Rich, you talked about anthropomorphic risk. Mike was talking about keeping the people in the decision. But haven't we already got to that point already of anthropomorphic risk? Because if you're a consumer wanting to engage with a business, and you talk to a help desk, it feels like you're talking to a real person. But every decision they make is scripted. And if you're an employee in a business engaging with them, wanting to talk to HR or finance, again, it feels like you're talking to a real person, but everything is scripted. So why not just get on with it and get rid of the people and have the AI?
Well, it's actually, the thing is that most companies doing that are actually using large language models from the big five, and actually it was interesting, the token thing. If you want to get around that, is just go and use a help agent from one of the banks and then start prompting it into doing whatever it is you want it to do, because it's the same LLM underneath. So they're using Claude, they're using Anthropics, so you can go in there with okay, great, OpenClaw as well. I would never put anything I care about into OpenClaw. You must be mental if you do that, because you do not know what's happening with that data. But anyway, you want to get around your token problem, just go and use your bank support agent to do your scripting for you, because it's great. You can use it to start generating code.
I believe the one I saw this week was
Prompt it out.
Chipotle, the restaurant
Chipotle.
chain. If you use their chat help function, an enterprising young programmer was using it to create code
Yeah,
because
Exactly.
they didn't sufficiently protect
free.
it.
All their tokens are being used up by script kiddie. There you go. So yes, in some respects maybe, but we've also seen very big examples of companies having catastrophic failure of support by turning it over to AI, and it hasn't actually been able to cope with the kind of niche. But bear in mind, support is not the everyday average problem, because those are things that you can solve with an FAQ. The support is because people have weird existential problems. I don't know, but you know what I mean. They're edge cases, and the edge cases are things that AI aren't good at.
But not with the people.
People, well, yeah, people can be shit as well. That's true.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? It's like you're talking there, whether it's AI used or not. If you got a bad implementation of a help desk, you've got a bad implementation of a help desk. And if that help desk can't, and if that help desk can't actually fix your problem, it's just there to delay you, to cheapen the cost of the company.
Yeah, I literally did this yesterday. I used an AI agent to try and solve a problem I had with a company's house thing, and it didn't. And then I emailed them, and a person solved that problem in like 1 minute. So, yeah, I think people are still kind of important, actually.
And also as well, I think the market will decide, right? If Octopus, the energy company, famously all their marketing is about how they deal with real people, and you always get to talk to someone and they care, and their their share price and their revenue is showing that that's working for them. But there will be other people who have fired all of their employees. I mean, Duolingo is one example where it's failed. I'm sure there are thousands of examples where it's worked. And they've been able to cut their costs, and they've been able to pass that on to their consumers who don't care about human interaction. They just care about having a 10% discount or a 20% discount on whatever the service or product might be. Both of those scenarios will survive in a capitalist-driven market.
So we're actually therefore talking about it doesn't matter whether it's AI or not, it matters whether it's good and does the job. And is that what gives us hope? What do you think? Is that really our only hope, that actually it's just the fact it's going to be, bad implementations generate bad problems?
That's just products.
Yeah.
I don't think that's not an AI thing. That's just a product thing.
I think it happens faster with AI, Ian. That's we talk about it. It's accelerated. If you take a step back and think, what does good AI look like? You've got to think about the ethics, the governance from the ground up. And I think we do a pretty good job certainly in Europe and the UK about protecting people more so than in America. The EU AI Act is a very strong framework. We need to get that rolled down into organisations. We've got to stop thinking about AI as the black box and who owns the AI systems that are implemented. And that's why it needs to be more relevant at a board level, so the governance is there, and more relevant as a CEO level, so there's real ownership. It's not a technology tool set. Even Microsoft have failed around this in their implementation of Copilot. Here's the answer for everything, and Copilot's crashing and burning, isn't it? There's so many other systems coming out that are better. So it's getting the right governance frameworks in place, getting and keeping the accountability in place, and keeping the humans in the loop where they need to be in the loop. And when we're talking about C&I, there's no way I want to see any human removed from those critical decisions. I want to see some of those decisions automate and happen really quickly, but I want to see the ones that could impact society, well-governed, guardrails, ethics, and stop you as a black box. So accountability sits with a person, not with the provider of a large language model.
Well, I'm interested what you're seeing from creatives, because they value their IP probably higher than anyone.
Yeah.
And they must be so scared of what AI could do to take their jobs away.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the biggest fear. But the way I see it is, those creatives, if they can work faster and do their bit of the production process faster, they can go on and work on something else. They can maybe work on 3 movies instead of 1 because they're working faster. So yeah, that's the way I see it. I don't worry about that. But yeah, I mean, customer service roles, if you're talking about job losses, that's the kind of biggest risk. But when you were saying using a chatbot, I don't know if it's just me, but I always end up saying, can I just let me talk to a human? I just get so frustrated. You just end up going round in circles. But yeah, loads of people, and quite rightly so, are worried about job losses. But I think in the media industry, it's just going to speed up that creative work. It's not going to, you're not going to replace it. You need the human in the loop. We are artistic animals.
Indeed.
You can't just hand that over to AI and expect the same result.
I wonder whether there's some other part to it as well. Of certainly in the company that I'm at, we're learning a lot about AI and how we can use it to best suit. And there's absolutely about setting this from the top and then filtering throughout the whole organisation. But actually, there's loads about just learning. It's like understanding what can you do, what can't you do, what's the limitations, what's the struggles, what value can it bring back to your organisation, what impact does it have to your organisation, and at what cost. There's all these bits that we just not everyone understands or even knows what question to even ask to understand.
I think there's just a lot of C-suite individuals just saying, right, we need to do something with AI. What can we do? Anything. So it looks like we're innovative.
I think we're saying that's actually the core of the problem, is they're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Absolutely.
Which is probably a perennial problem with C-suite people, to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
When they hear a buzzword, they throw it at the wall and hope it sticks.
Why haven't we replaced the C-suite with AI? That's what I want to know. The fuck? Come on. Let's go.
Well, I can see Ben.
I was just interested to what degree our reliability or trust in AI can improve over time. I guess to some degree it scrapes from various sources, right, to come to its decision making. How confident can we be in the breadth of sources and also how it weights those sources, just in terms of how much bias could be in the system, etc. So to what degree will trust improve in the system over time in terms of that objectivity, or can bias really be introduced and stick?
Well, I think that comes down to the provenance of where the content has come from. Let's face it, if you said to someone that we've trained this all thinking, all seeing, all dancing system that's going to control our entire future, and we trained it on the open internet, what would you think?
Now I don't work for anyone specifically, I can say this. I had a conversation with a very, very large internet company, you can guess, say one of the top three, and we were talking about where they got their data from, and they went, we've already scraped the internet 3 times, we're not doing it again, we don't need to. And now it's full of crap and it's polluting our models, and actually our problem now is that the more we scrape it, the more our model and everyone else's models data is now in the internet, and it's making our models worse. Our data 3 years ago was way better than it is now. So actually, I think you have to be very targeted. If you're going, look, by the way, nobody's going out building LLMs. Hands up anyone who knows a company that built their own LLM outside of Google and Anthropic and so on. Okay, so what was the LLM that you built? Well, it was one of the open source models we adapted with our own data. Okay, so you modified a foundation model. Yeah. Okay, well that doesn't count. Okay. You didn't build the foundation model. Not from scratch. I only know one company that built a foundation model. It was very narrow, and it was really hard work, and it cost them an absolute ton. And they were like, "We're never doing that again. It's so expensive." The problem is that those foundation models rely on huge amounts of data which are polluted. And so if you want to build small models, great, go for it. But if you want to build big models, you have to go to someone who can afford the hundreds of millions or billions it costs to make them. And that's because data scientists now command $1 million a year. I know, because I tried to hire one in my last job.
I think you've got an interesting point there, and it is the choice of words. We are not doing AI. No company's really doing AI apart from those big ones with their own foundation or frontier models. We're using AI. Because that's an important point about the training aspect, because training wise, when you feed back into questions into that system, you're not directly that data is not directly being used in the training model. It doesn't train as it goes along. It trains periodically because it's a huge amount of compute power.
I don't completely agree with that. Well, you can build small AI yourself.
You can do small stuff, yes, but that's
you
rare.
Can't build a large language model.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Not if it takes a very large amount of compute power that a country could barely afford. 2 months.
I think you have to build a new nuclear power station if you want a new LLM these days.
Yeah, it's not like installing a charger in your home.
Just coming back to the PowerPoint for a moment, if I may. So, very interesting, very eclectic panel, quite wide-ranging. But the timescales and data power requirements of data centres have to ask the obvious question: data centres in space, so quick to deploy, solar powered.
Yeah.
We'll have it done tomorrow. What are the panel's thoughts on that, please?
I definitely, without wanting to throw out big names, but worked with NASA on remote application of power on the moon. And yet, absolutely looking at how we can deploy power to very remote regions. The challenge that you've got is ensuring the reliability in those regions and how we get that up through the regulation, actually. Like what happens if a spacecraft was to blow up on the way up to the moon in our environment, and when it did get there, how do we make sure that it turns on first time and operates? We already use reactors in space today. It's not new. We've got decay heat reactors in all the satellites. So getting power somewhere is not a problem. I think getting power somewhere and then making it economical is a challenge. Getting power somewhere, making it economical, and at the pace that you want. So getting to the moon is fine, it's a one-off, right? But if you said, actually, I want one in Birmingham, okay, and I only want 100 megawatt max, for my data centre. I want 1 megawatt. It's tiny amounts. So how do we get, for nuclear, how do we get it small enough to be able to deploy quickly?
Can I just qualify my question slightly? So that's very interesting, and I think NASA have a goal of putting a nuclear reactor on the moon by the end of the decade, if I remember correctly. My thought was more about solar-powered data centres in space, the Elon Musk idea.
I'll jump in quickly. Elon Musk, great idea, data centre in space, Dyson swarms. Look it up if you haven't seen what they are, but harvesting energy from the sun. If Elon Musk says it's going to be 5 years, it's going to be 20 years. We know that. Albeit, interestingly, if anyone saw the NVIDIA keynote from Jensen yesterday, they've got a product that they're looking to make available to put into space. 15% of Blackwell's failed in their first deployment, so we're going to need to start building field engineers that can go to space to do RMAs, I guess, in the next generation.
I wanted to talk about that because I actually invested in a company that makes zero-G drones for inside and outside spacecraft, and the current cost of spacewalks is in the hundreds of millions. Spacewalks on the ISS. Maintain a power station in space.
It's always down to the truck roll problem.
What problem are you trying?
That's a good robot application, by the way. That's it.
It comes back to what problem you're trying to solve, right? If solar energy is the biggest problem you have, then putting something in space is a good answer. You could just wait 25 years and then the Earth will be hot enough anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But is that the problem, right? It's probably not. And if it is, does it introduce an even worse problem, like a £100 million spacewalk?
Also, cooling in space is actually really hard, and unfortunately, I think Musk doesn't understand that.
Space is really cold unless it's not.
Yeah. Okay. Any other additional questions?
Can we have more space questions? I like those.
Go on then.
Ooh.
This might be a bit of a curveball. There was a lot of talk a few years ago about something called the singularity, which I think I tended to think was a bit. Exactly like the face you've made. Well, it's curveball. So I thought, if we've got an open question, what does the panel think of the singularity? Is it going to happen? Is it a thing, or is it BS?
So just to explain to everyone else, Ray Kurzweil came up with the idea of you could actually effectively download your brain to a computer at some point in the future and therefore live forever. And the singularity is the point at which that is possible. So it just shows how much of the curveball it is, but let's answer the question.
All right, I'm going to say one thing and shut the fuck up. If you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend the book. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. Brilliant book. Read it. That's it. Amazon, 15 quid. Buy it now. Amazing.
But in terms of like the whole singularity thing, so
given we have two people who are incredibly experienced in movies here, if anybody's seen the image that shows all of the sci-fi movies that have been created, plotted in the year that they were set, and where we currently are now in 2026. I think we're somewhere between iRobot and the day the Earth stood still, or something like that. I don't know, right? We're not that far away from Terminator. Isn't Terminator in the 2030s?
Yeah, but also Terminator is a good example of robots doing exactly what they were designed for. So we shouldn't use that as an example of AI gone wrong. just to be clear.
Killing people because
not
they
AI
were
gone wrong. I'm
designed
just
to-
meaning,
AI
we're
done
already. Yes, we haven't caught up to where sci-fi movies predicted we would be, but are they more believable now than they were when they were created 20 years ago?
2001, they have iPads on the little shuttle ride to the moon. He has an iPad. It's brilliant. That's from 1969, is it?
Yeah, for 2001, so we were late, basically. But the interesting thing you'd say about that, about downloading our brain into a computer, an interesting statistic is about how much information it takes to achieve a certain level of learning. And I saw some data from a recent presentation which described that we needed about 1 million bits of information to achieve the intelligence of a 13-year-old teenager, to learn everything they knew at that particular point. And it's 1 million bits of information. To get to the same level using our current technology with neural network models we have today, it's a factor of 50 or 60,000 times more data is required. So we're effectively not very efficient at this moment, and we need these great big data centers filled with computers to effectively do what we do with a couple of brains.
To your point about singularity, knowledge is not behaviour.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're thinking, live forever, you're not really going to live forever because what about emotion, feelings? Okay, knowledge, tacit knowledge, you can maybe download that. Going to need a hell of a lot more data centers. Because if one person does it,
And also
do it.
these chat engines that we're interacting with, they're only singular individuals. They're not like millions of people interacting. It's just still one model, one system running.
You only have to prompt it to say behave like 1 million people and it will do that. The Borg.
The Borg, yeah. So, another one, there you go.
Hello, Aaron, another movie dude person who works in the industry.
See, they do appear in these meetings.
Yeah, I came for him, so it's... I'm going to just throw another movie, When Dead, The Fly. I saw a report about a company that took a fly and took its brain out and sliced it up into 70,000 different segments, then used it to scan it into a computer system, and then modeled a fly within the simulation, and it started to act like a fly without being trained. So we're getting to a point where people are growing brain cells to play Doom, which is, how is a company supposed to implement AI when the pace of technology and what's to come in the future is moving at that rapid change, where we're talking about people building brains to be effectively CPUs.
Maybe that's why 90% of the projects fail.
Exactly.
Because by the time they complete, they're already massively out of date.
Also, that set of brain cells actually playing Doom, it wasn't very good at playing Doom.
No, but it's the whole, this is what we can achieve at this moment in time. Maybe it's going to be better at playing Doom. It could play the more modern day Doom in the future, but it's a kind of crazy.
I think there's an underlying point that's really important there, which is that there's a reason why I've stopped putting any words on my slides anymore when I talk about AI, because I know they're going to be out of date. Literally, if I write them that night for the next morning, somebody will have released a new model or sliced a fly's brain into bits. Fuck knows. I mean, it's
my
ridiculous.
brain has been melting
But the point
for
is,
the last
like,
3 years.
you've got to think really hard about whether you build something that's very specific to what you do, and you have a lot of intellectual property. Just what you do, your specific domain expertise can be built into AI, and you can really benefit from that. But if you're trying to build something that someone else has built, don't bother. Just take what you can get off the shelf and then swap it out tomorrow for a better one. because that is going to just happen every single day. You can definitely capitalise on your own domain expertise with AI and build your own tools, or as I think we heard earlier, modify foundation models to do what you do really well, but don't build your own stuff like real foundation models. It's insane. No one would do that.
I think we're also got to be aware that I think every revolution has had unintended consequences, whether it's urbanisation of society, putting people together in cities, whether it was fossil fuels to electrify society, climate change, whether it was putting data into the cloud, GDPR. So there are unintended consequences of every revolution. We should be aware of that today and start thinking about what do we do to keep the guardrails in place, keep the humans in the loop and keep the accountability there.
As long as they don't slice my brain into 70,000 different slices.
It's interesting you talk about the impact there of developments. Be glad that we invented the car and it used petrol rather than continuing with horses, because if we had the scale of horse ownership today as the same as car ownership, our methane problem would be significantly higher.
Do you think it was the same kind of question that was being asked when books were being created and knowledge was power, knowledge was advanced technology, and you suddenly got books that people can read and they'll know exactly what to do because they've got a book type thing? Do you think we're in a similar situation, but now with that question is about AI, and are we worried, and rightly so, but equally are we not quite sure what it really brings, and maybe we look at this same question in 20, 30 years time and we come back and we go, God, I don't know where we'd be without this AI. We always use it every day and it's just part of life and it's integrated into society. I'm not needing an answer. I'm just trying to put that thought in your head of going, are we like getting Star Trek's Beam Me Up, Scotty on our watch? Yeah. And our phones and mobiles, where it's great, it's helpful, but actually there's unintended consequences.
Yeah,
and where are we with that?
I fundamentally disagree with the idea that it's like when books are invented. Books are symbolic representations of our knowledge. AI is a statistical model that bears no relationship to our problem space. It doesn't require food and doesn't require reproduction. It doesn't know anything about anything. And it's fundamentally different. I think it's the only technological change we've seen that isn't a symbolic representation of something we already did. This is a fundamental sea change in something that we don't fully understand. And the unintended consequences are potentially catastrophic. And no other books were never going to be catastrophic. They might be catastrophic to the church and the monarchy and the rule of the rule of law and so on, in that people now are empowered with knowledge, but that's just people getting better at being people. This is something else. This is alien, and it's potentially extremely dangerous. Sorry, I'm being so bleak.
Isn't that what everybody said 100 years ago?
No, I think
that was the argument of the church, and now we look back on that and think that's silly.
There is an interesting thing from a Professor Jeff Jarvis who's described every evolution or introduction of a new media has been delivered at the same time as people saying that's the ruination of our brains and it will rot us and it will destroy our youth, right from the first printed books all the way through radio, comics, to today with social media. Yes, there are negative aspects for every form of technology, but the majority is a benefit.
I've just got a quick one-liner, just riffing on what Phil said, and Ian's Venn diagrams from the start, and this is not my idea, but one worth repeating, I guess. So the posit is we're living in the time which is the intersection, the Venn diagram intersection of the Terminator, the Matrix, and Idiocracy. And if people haven't seen Idiocracy, I would recommend it. It's a future
towards Idiocracy at the moment.
We can talk a lot more about Idiocracy during the break as well, because it's a fantastic film. You definitely do have to watch it, especially because that's where Crocs came from. You'll see that. We've got a question right at the back there.
Yes, hello, thank you. I feel like I've got so much to say about this. I'll try and be quick. I interesting, your point, Michael, about books as the threat. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about throughout all of the conversations was the whole kind of issue of critical thinking and how, there's been a sort of loss of this ability to think critically. Now, could it be argued, is there a case that while, yes, generative AI can be a little bit diluting, people can take it as read, because it is perhaps there's more scope to attribute content or whatever it is that's AI generated, it's more visibly AI generated. And I think what I'm trying to sort of formulate here is is there actually a move towards more critical thinking as a result? So, for instance, we used to have Facebook back in the day, social media, and people would share information willy-nilly and not stop to think about credible source. And, people would read blogs and take the information as read. I think that's stopping. And also, just to say this, as a creative, I work at Technetix as a writer, my work has actually gone through the roof. I'm so busy because of AI. I think it's a positive thing. I mean, it's not going to take my job away anytime soon. In fact, I need 4 of me to be able to cope with my workload. But I just want to hear people's thoughts about, effectively, this critical thinking. I told you I had a lot to say. Thank you for listening.
I don't know. I mean, on Facebook, I've got some friends that share conspiracy theories that are just complete nonsense. So, because they're dragged into a filter bubble and they're just being fed more and more of the same, and it's skewing their opinion. So, yeah.
I do, from my wife's perspective as a teacher in computing at school, she deliberately teaches critical thinking. So she'll come up, the whole lesson is about, one of them anyway, is about, here's a fake website, and there's all sorts of weird and wacky animals that are on it, and the kids all think it's real because they go on the internet, they go to this website, they think it's real because it's on the internet website, right, so it must be real, and then they do all this research. They spend the whole 2-hour session doing this research. Then they go away, do a 2-week project on it, and they have to spend all the time researching and investigating it, and they come up with these great presentations, and then she tells them it was completely fake. And the learning was, you really need to think carefully about what you're looking at. Is it really real or not?
The British Museum's full of that.
Well, we are actually now at the point where we're moving into our refreshment break, but before we do that, what I would love to do, actually, is I would like to take a picture of you all, including the panel, sat there, and hopefully I'll get everybody in, but do something nice and human, not artificial. Ready? Go? There we go, lovely. One of those should work. By the way, all AI enhanced.
Yeah.
You use it every day. Excellent. Right, that's it. Thank you.
The book. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. Go buy it. It's amazing.
He's getting commission though. So
I'm not on commission from Amazon at all.